If something went wrong, it was my fault. If the rice burned, it was my fault. If it rained, it was my fault. I was always the one responsible, and it really hurt my feelings. There was a lot of emotional abuse, and sometimes it even got physical. There was no way to escape. In November 2010, I went to the United States to live and spend time with Truth. I didn't have a specific goal at the time. My mother lived in the United States at that time. If something broke, it was my fault. If the rice burned, it was my fault. If it rained, it was my fault. I was always the one who was offended, and I would use many bad words and heavy words. There was an out-of-control, totally music situation. In 2010, November 2010, I went to live in the United States and spend time in Truth. I didn't have a goal at that moment. My mother lived in the United States at that time. She was in Brazil, and I went to meet her for work and learn another language. I got there with a week. I met my ex-husband at that moment. I was 25. I knew him because he worked for my mother at a certain time. At that time, I was a little lost. I knew how to walk in town at that time. I had the ease that I have today, right? I had a cell phone with GPS and all. Then I met him while working for my mom. She was in Brazil, and I went to meet her for a language learning trip. I had only a week to get there, and I met my ex-husband. I was 25 at the time, and I knew him because he worked for my mother. I was a little lost, but I knew how to walk around the city. I had the ease that I have today with a cell phone and GPS. Then I met him while working for my mom. By chance, we lost each other on the way, but he asked for my number. We lost touch, but he contacted me. I followed my course, and he called to go out. I said, no, he'll have fun. Let's go out, let's dance, and we started to leave. I only had my mother's best friend at the time, her partner, who also knew him and worked in the same branch. We had this connection. We started hanging out, and it was getting good. We weren't in love at first, but we really liked being together. Then, a month later, I found out I was pregnant. I wasn't planning on having a baby, but here I was. His family started asking about my pregnancy, and we started out getting along really well, and it was great. We weren't in love at first, but we enjoyed each other's company. Then, a month before we were supposed to leave, I found out I was pregnant. I was on birth control, but I didn't plan on having a child or starting a family. Still, that's what happened. My family was surprised, and they started asking questions. They wanted to know why I wanted to keep the baby. I told them that he was a simple person, a normal worker, and that he didn't have any outside interests. For me, it was an accident, but for him too. At that moment, I decided to have my son and support my family. Then, a cousin said that if I didn't, he would make sure I didn't get an abortion. We're from different cultures, and we have different ideas about strength. I'm from Brazil, and he's from Cuba. I wanted to make sure he knew that I had interests, that I was a normal person who worked and had no external interests. It was an accident for both of us, but at that moment I decided that I was going to have my son and raise a family. A cousin said that if it were him, he would drag me through the hair, and that I was going to abort. We were in the United States, and I said, I will not abort. I will not. I understand. I'm not giving you any responsibility. If so, I'll come back and have my son in Brazil. I don't need anyone. I didn't come here on a document, and there is no blow. He is 4 years younger than me. Beyond the situation, the cultural question of maturity also has nothing to do with age, but at that moment he was not mature. I was in the United States at the time, and I said, no, I won't. I understand that you don't want to be responsible. I'm not giving you any responsibility. If you want to be responsible, I'll come back. I have my son in Brazil. I don't need anyone. I didn't come here without documents. There is no problem. He is 4 years younger than me. Beyond the situation, he had a question about maturity. This maturity has nothing to do with age, but at that moment, he lacked it. He didn't plan it either, but it happened when I said I would. He said no, we should stay in the house because if we get married, at least you will have documents to be able to come and go. I can have contact with my son and everything. I accepted, and we got married. Almost 5 months later, I found that the baby had a problem. He would not survive if I came to birth without options. I had to have. He didn't plan it, but it happened when I said I would. He said no to the wedding, but I said, okay, if we get married, at least you'll have the documents to be able to come and go, and I'll be able to have contact with my son and everything. So I said, okay, let's get married. 4 or 5 months later, I found out that the baby had a problem and wouldn't survive if I gave birth without options. I had to have surgery to remove the baby. When I lost the baby, I left Brazil because people had nothing else in common, and I was already feeling the pressure from my family to say that I wanted this. I should remember that I got married, but I didn't enter the documents for that exact reason. Family is saying that I wanted it. I wish I wanted it. I didn't get into the documents, and I wouldn't have had a right to do so. He said no to the marriage. We're already living together and working. We have plans and everything's going smoothly, so don't go away. I stayed. We started working very hard, and it was a total transformation. In such a short time, I left my life in Brazil where I had financial independence and arrived in the United States. We know that we have to do everything because it's a totally different culture. I didn't let's keep going. We're already living together, working, and making plans. Everything's going smoothly. Don't go away, not so I stayed. We started working really hard and it was a big change. So I left my life in Brazil where I was financially independent and moved to the United States. We knew that we had to do everything because it's a totally different culture. I didn't know the language and he's from Cuba, so he speaks Spanish. He also tried to learn English, but it didn't go very well. We were working hard during the adjustment period even though it was very difficult. But we managed to get through it. When the opportunity came to visit Cuba, I hadn't been there for a few years and it was my first time in Cuba. We went to Cuba and then I started feeling the transformation. He's from Cuba, so he speaks Spanish but not very well. We tried to learn together, but it was a challenge. We persevered and we were doing well, even though it was difficult. Then we had the opportunity to visit Cuba and it was my first time there. We went and I started to feel the changes in our relationship. Before we were just roommates who each did our own thing and gave our best. When we went to Cuba for the first time, I started feeling restless. You can see why the culture was challenging. It was hard to leave me alone at home, to go out at night with friends, and I stayed home crying. When we returned to the United States, we talked about everything. We had a really nice relationship and then we had a child. I was a stay-at-home mom and he was a working dad. We had different cultures, and it was hard for him to understand that I needed to be at home with the kids. I felt like I had to be super patient, and I thought, oh, I need to have patience. I'm married. I need to have patience because people. I always tried to be patient and understanding because we had such different cultures. But in his mind, it didn't work that way. He thought I had to be at home waiting for him no matter what he was doing. I suffered a lot because I remembered the facts every day. I thought, oh, I need to have patience. I'm married. I'm in this relationship and I need to have patience because people have very different cultures. The value placed on family is very different. It's extremely different. After 4 years, we decided that I wanted to have a son because life was already hard and we needed it. We decided to strengthen our relationship when I got pregnant with my son. He's older now. Things began to emerge that I found very strange, but I was trying to understand his culture. He started using profanity. We come from very different cultures, and it's interesting how we value family in such unique ways. I decided to have a son 4 years later because life was already challenging and we needed to strengthen our relationship. When I got pregnant with my son, who is now 10, things began to change. It was strange, but I was trying to understand his culture. It made me feel less confident. At the time, all my family was around, and I thought it was normal for him to be different. I never spoke badly about my culture, never offered anything negative, and never felt superior to anyone. He learned a lot of things and absorbed many aspects of our culture, but it wasn't enough. We moved a lot, and I worked really hard to support my family. I was diminished by it all, and at the time, all my family members were. I said it's normal, right? Normal to him, maybe? Maybe he will change gradually, knowing my culture. I never spoke a bad word, never offered, never humiliated, never felt superior to anyone. I learned and absorbed many things from our culture, but it wasn't enough. We started working very, very much and changed states several times. I worked always very dedicated to family, very dedicated to my son, to home, to work, right there for me. I decided to live that, and I did that with excellence, right? I was the best mother, the best wife, the best owner of the best friend's house, the best professional. I learned the languages, both Spanish and English, was not easy, but I already knew it. It's in the rain is to get wet, right? And get their music. After that, the time passed, and that's how it came out more, and I always tried, always justifying. I was so grateful to have my son at home with me, and I wanted to do my best for his family. I was the best mother, the best wife, the best owner, and the best friend. I was the best professional too. Learning to speak both Spanish and English was challenging, but I was determined to learn. I thought, if it's raining, and you just go through it. After some time passed, more people started asking about my culture. It had been 3 years and people said, "Let's have a little girl." They wanted to try having a little girl. When my daughter came, the business burst once and for all. I wanted to put my daughter's name, the name of his mother, to his mother. His mother never liked me and she was rude to me several times. I've been thinking a lot about the question of culture rights, and it's been 3 years since the people said, "Let's have a little girl." They said, "Let's have a little girl. Let's try a little girl." When the little girl came, the business burst. Once and for all, he wanted to put his daughter's name, the name of his mother, to his mother. She never liked me and she was rude to me several times. I never knew. I paid the same currency because after all, we only give what we have, right? And so it was the most person, best cared for. I did everything that I could, everything that was in my control. I did everything for all of them, not only for the mother, not only for him, but also for his brothers, nephews, and uncles. I did my best right as soon as I had never done for my family. I had to offer his family what I could, and I did it with love, like this. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think I paid the same amount because after all, we only give what we have. I did everything in my power, everything within my control for everyone, not just the mother, not just the child, but also the brothers, nephews, and uncles. I did my best as soon as I could, never expecting anything in return. I did it with love, like this. I'm a genuine person. I've never played in anyone's face. I did it with kindness. I liked it, but I'm repeating that we only give what we have. When you saw the little girl, he passed practically the whole pregnancy without talking to me because I wanted her mother's name. I didn't want to not have it. So much so that I decided the name of my daughter with 2 weeks to have the baby and put the last 4 letters of his mother's name. I didn't feel loved, but I felt dear. It was a really difficult pregnancy, different from the first. It was wonderful, but the second was no longer so good. And I started to feel overwhelmed with respect to obligations. I felt a lack of respect and care. I always talked about it. I always put it out there. Of course, I was a woman and I needed this. I was named after my mother, who I didn't feel close to. I didn't feel loved, but it was a wonderful pregnancy. The second was different from the first. It was difficult, but I felt overwhelmed with obligations and a lack of care and attention. I always talked about it, and I always put it out there. Of course, I was a woman and I needed this. I needed affection and attention. I asked for respect, but nobody listened. It was no use. Still, the family didn't like me either because I have a different culture. I'm a serious person. If I don't have intimacy, I don't have it. It's about conversation, laughter, and everything being friendly. I was a very educated person, but I didn't push myself too hard. And I didn't push the other person to do the same. It was very difficult and I was working very hard. I was extremely tired of everything. But I went ahead and tried to improve our economic situation. We worked much more and we also started to have more expenses. We saw more opportunities and we saw that we were growing. I think it was very hard for him to control that growth. Today is. I'm a highly educated person, but I didn't realize that I was struggling to fit in with my peers. I was working really hard and it was draining me. I was exhausted, but I kept going. I was working a lot more and we were facing more expenses. We were seeing more opportunities and it was growing. I felt like I was losing control. A year ago, my daughter was 6 years old and she was a little behind. I started therapy to understand what was happening because he blamed me for everything. If something broke, it was my fault. If the rice burned, it was my fault. If it rained, it was my fault. He would always say mean things to me. He would use physical and psychological abuse. Music, it was totally out of control. I had no support network. My mother was. She was living in the United States, but in another distant state, and I never went to take my problems right to my family because I was distant. No one could help me, right? I had just a friend who I talked about the days like this and said what was happening, and this friend was the one who gave the greatest support, to this day. The person who is always with me. Oh no, not I only am very grateful, right? This friend's life, because really, if I had continued in that way, I would not have. I was living in another state, and I never went to my family for help because I felt so distant from them. I had just one friend who was always there for me, and he was the one who gave me the greatest support, to this day. He's the person who's always with me. I'm very grateful to this friend because if I had continued without seeking help, I wouldn't have achieved what many people see who sometimes lose their lives trying to help and can't. The time came when I was in therapy and I started understanding things. I sought a lot of knowledge and knowledge releases. I read a lot and I looked for a lot. The time I had alone was straightforward. I was on the computer, on the phone, buying online books to understand myself. All this time, and I found out that he was narcissistic. I decided to get help, and I'm so glad I did. I was struggling to understand things, and I couldn't get the support I needed. I started reading a lot, looking for answers. I spent a lot of time alone, using the computer or phone, buying books to understand myself and others. It wasn't until then that I learned about narcissism. I realized that I hadn't approached this subject in the right way, and I went back to everything. I knew everything would fit. People had already won many things, but in return, I paid a very high price. I even didn't want to leave my home, and I didn't want to do anything else because we had nowhere to go. I was looking at someone or had someone who was giving it to me. I didn't do anything else with us, no longer. I couldn't even go out to a restaurant and have someone at the table look my way or crack a joke. It was just too much for me to handle. So I made the decision to stay home and focus on my well-being. We bought a house and we're paying off the mortgage. We've won many things and helped many people because we're kind. I couldn't even go out to a restaurant and have a table look at me. I couldn't even have someone release a joke for me. It was just too much for me to bear. So I was the first to decide not to go out more. I didn't want to do anything else. I just wanted to stay home. We bought a house and we paid for it with a year of my salary. We paid for the house and we paid off the debt. We won many things and we helped many people because we were always there for them. But he felt superior to everyone and that really killed me. I was an extremely cheerful person. I liked to laugh, chat with everyone, and understand the problems of others. I am a person, right? I'm human, so I couldn't do it anymore. He created his events at home and all his guests. If I said I was going to call a friend, could you call your friend that you were talking to? I was feeling so overwhelmed. I was always on the phone talking to the same friend and it was exhausting. I started doing therapy to understand how it worked. I realized that I didn't want to change him and I didn't want him to change me. I was always playing the same role and it wasn't hurting me or humiliating me. He treated me well and gave me time. We just need to be dedicated to each other. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share my journey with you. It's been a real journey and I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned. I started doing therapy and it opened my eyes. I understood how it worked and I stopped wanting to change him. I didn't want him to change, but I also knew that I had to be true to myself. I've always been myself and that's okay. It's not embarrassing or humiliating. It's just who I am. We need to give each other time and dedication. I've been supporting him after many events where he lacked respect. The last one was at the end of April. He was demanding a lot of money from me and I wasn't to blame. I couldn't control it and I couldn't solve it. He came to my kitchen, poured himself a cup of coffee, and sat down. His sister was there. We had a few misunderstandings recently and I'm worried that it might be getting out of hand. I'm not sure what to do. The first incident was at the end of April. He was upset because I wasn't able to help him with something related to his work. He was in the kitchen and he was upset. He was drinking coffee and was looking at me. His sister was there and she said, "He's upset because you're not helping him." I didn't know what to say. He turned to me and said, "I'm leaving here. Otherwise, the police will take me." I looked at him and said, "What are you talking about?" He took his things and left. He said he was going to sleep at the hotel. The next day he called me. I said, "I'm not going to stay home waiting. I'm going to work with my sister-in-law." He looked at me and said, "It's this." I didn't say anything. He turned to me and said, "I'm leaving. Otherwise the police will take me." I looked at him and spoke quickly. He took his things and left, saying I was going to sleep at the hotel. The other day he called me. I said I wouldn't stay home waiting. I was going to work with my sister-in-law. He called me when he called me and asked, "Where are you from?" I told him I was working with his sister. He asked, "What do you need to work this far?" I felt offended, and I said everything that came to mind. I said, "What's the problem? I work. I want to work. I don't want to stay home and cry." He said, "I'll go. I can go home and search my things." I said, "I'll go. I work with my sister-in-law and he always asks me, 'Where are you from?' I tell him, 'I'm working with your sister. What do you need me to do?' He starts yelling at me, saying bad things, and I tell him, 'What's the problem? I want to work. I don't want to stay home and cry.' He says, 'I'll go. I can go home and look for my things.' I tell him, 'Don't worry. I'm already going home. I'll get your things and go out.' I go home and he's there, tidying up his things and helping me collect everything and put it in the car. He leaves later and he asks, 'Hey, can I see the children?' I tell him they're yours. You don't have to ask me if you can come right now. You know the door code. You can come each time you want to see your children." He says, "Our relationship is over. Don't worry, I'm already on my way home. When I get there, I'll get your things and go out. I'll go home and he'll be there, tidying up his things and helping to collect everything and putting it in the car. They'll leave later and he'll ask, 'Can I come right now?' You know the door code. You can come whenever you want to see your children. Our relationship is over." He arrived home later. I had cooked dinner and my children loved the food. He asked, "Can I eat here?" I said, "For sure. We give food to a dog because I won't give my children's father food when he said he was going." The children said, "No, no, no, no." He said, "I can sleep here." I said, "Sleep in the guest room. We don't need you to cross over. I'll keep doing everything that I." He arrived at my home later, and my children were delighted to see him. I made sure to have some food ready for him and he asked if he could eat there. I assured him that I would feed my children's father, even though he had said he was leaving. The children begged me not to, but I insisted that he sleep in the guest room. I did everything I could to make him comfortable, from cooking to cleaning to washing the dishes. I was very scared at the time and he tried to comfort me. I imagined that things wouldn't get better here, but I was wrong. The other day, I went to work with my sister-in-law. When I got home, he was crying and screaming, kneeling on the floor, asking for what he could. Before I cooked, I cleaned, I washed, I did everything. But between us, there was nothing more. I won't lie, I was very afraid at the time. He threw the coffee to get me and took the wall. I was afraid, right? I imagined it wouldn't be good here. The other day, I went to work again with my sister-in-law. When I got home, he was dying of crying, screaming, kneeling on the floor, asking me to be with us again. I decided that I no longer wanted to leave my room. I couldn't stand it anymore because I no longer wanted to leave my children. I no longer paid attention to them like before. I had no longer been willing to get ready right then. That left me feeling very down. I was very bad. I was years old. I felt like I couldn't do it alone. And I asked him if he wanted me to find a lawyer. I wanted to be with him, but I couldn't handle it anymore because I didn't want to leave my room. I wasn't paying attention to my kids like before. And I didn't want to get ready right then because it made me feel really bad. I was very bad, but I was trying to understand and I thought it was normal. Even when I understood that it wasn't normal, I was burying myself alone, and then the love started bombing. I said, "Don't go to Europe. Let's go to Dubai." I said, "I'll change your car. I'll pay. I don't know how much a week." I don't know what I said. "It's over. Give me just one more chance." I gave you. I was trying to understand and I thought it was normal right up until the moment I realized it wasn't. I was trying to take care of myself and then love came along. It was like a new world opened up. "Let's go to Dubai. I'll change your car. I'll pay. I don't know how much a week. I don't know what I said. It's over. Give me just one more chance. I gave you 13 years of my life, and you were super happy. You continued with your friends and you had your family. I had nothing. I couldn't laugh out loud. I couldn't talk to anyone I wanted to. I couldn't even talk on the phone with my family. I just hung up the phone. I felt like I didn't have a life of my own anymore. I spent a lot of time crying and it was really hard. I felt like I didn't have a life of my own anymore. I felt so lonely. I asked God for help as soon as I left that person because I couldn't take it anymore. I talked to a lawyer about everything. The lawyer told me what I was going to do with the kids. I spoke to the children. My husband is Brazilian, and I wanted to leave because zero contact is real. If I had stayed, I would have been unable to. I'll be honest, I cried a lot. I asked God for help as soon as I got out of that situation because I couldn't take any more. I talked to a lawyer about everything, and he told me how I was going to take care of the kids. I spoke to the children. TM has Brazilian citizenship too. I wanted to leave because zero contact is real. If I had stayed, I would have been trapped. When you're in an addiction, it's like a drug you know is bad but you can't stop. I saw a lot of manipulation and abuse, and it was very extreme. I'm summarizing because it's a long and very painful story, but I had to make a decision. I spent a month and a half separately inside the house, speaking unintentionally to touch me without wanting to say a word. It was very difficult. I knew I had to get out of the relationship because it was becoming an addiction. I knew it was bad, but I couldn't understand it. I saw a lot of manipulation and abuse, and it was very extreme. I had to make a decision, and I spent a month and a half separately inside the house, speaking unintentionally to touch me without wanting to say a word. It was very difficult, especially for the sake of the children. I said that Mom was thinking about going back to Brazil. Hey, you know how Daddy is. Dad made Mom sad, right? My children had already witnessed other things and they said, "Okay, Mom is good. Let's stay with Dinda and Grandpa and Grandma." I said, "Let's go." They said, "I want to stay with Mom." Then I started all the procedures to look for an apartment and school for the children. I decided to do what was best for the kids, so I came back to Brazil in May 2024. I told my kids that their mom was thinking about going back to Brazil. I know how Daddy is, he made Mom sad. My kids had already seen other things and they said, "Mom is good. Let's stay with Dinda and Grandpa and Grandma." I said, "Let's go." They said, "I want to, Mom." Then I started all the procedures to look for an apartment and a school for the kids. He spoke X, which he had already decided to send for maintenance of the children. The lawyer said, "Even though you are entitled to a pension, it works like this. I would have had the right to 6.5 years of pension, which is relative to half the time we spent married." I said, "Okay, but what is the process for this?" He said, "Can't take a while." I said, "I don't want anything. I don't want your house." He said, "I'm here to talk about the maintenance of our children." I replied, "I understand and I'm glad we're on the same page. I'm entitled to a pension, right?" He said, "Yes, you're eligible for a pension, but it's calculated based on half the time we were married." I said, "I understand and I'm fine with that. I don't want your house or your pension." He said, "I understand and I'm fine with that too. I don't want your pension and I don't want anything to do with the company we had business with." I said, "I understand and I'm fine with that too. I gave up 20% of my shares in the company for mine and I'm actually glad I did." I understood that he was destroyed, and I'm glad I came back to Brazil in May of 2024. I'm a different person now and I'm ready to move forward. I'm not interested in my home or my pension. I don't want the company's money. I had 20% of the company and I gave it all up for my own peace of mind. I realized that I was destroyed. I came back to Brazil in May 2024 and I am someone else. I tried to be the best person I could be. I tried everything. I gave everything. The only thing missing was my life. It was too much. I have 2 kids. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't see the future. I didn't have a perspective on life. I dreamed more. I dreamed of blaming myself and feeling obligated to perform. I did everything I could to be the best person I could be. I tried everything, I gave everything, I tried my best. But I was missing my life, you know? I have 2 kids and I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't see the future, I couldn't see my life. I dreamed of blaming myself and feeling like I had to live up to his dreams because I didn't have any of my own. I couldn't do anything and I lost a lot of time. I know I learned a lot and I lived amazing things, but I can't remember good things about my relationship. I'm not even sure I can call it a relationship, but I'm grateful that I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm grateful that I can climb the no way out mountain. I had dreams he didn't have, but I couldn't do anything. I lost a lot of time and I know I learned a lot. I lived amazing things, but I can't remember good things about my relationship. I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel or the way out of the well. But that's how it happened, and today I am happy and independent. Difficulties will always pass while we are alive. Everyone has difficulties one after another, but I usually say that what comes from now on won't be anything compared to what I lived before because I arrived at the bottom of the well, even mine. My mental health destroyed my physical health and caused pain in unimaginable places. I'm so grateful to be here today, sharing my journey and how I've found the strength to overcome challenges. Every journey has its ups and downs, and I've been through some tough times. But I've also learned that every new day brings new possibilities, and I'm thankful for the support of my loved ones, especially my psychologists, who have been a huge help. My friend, I can't thank you enough. Today, I'm living a life full of love, peace, and joy without any negativity. My children are thriving in school, and that makes me feel so happy. Since the first week, we've been welcomed with open arms by our new community. My friends, my family, and my school have been incredibly supportive. My therapies are still going strong, and we understand that we need to be strong every day. It's important to know yourself and protect yourself from many things. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Since the first week, we've been so happy to see everyone here. We've been getting to know our friends, family, and school. Everyone has been so welcoming, and we're so grateful for the support. Our therapies are still going strong because we understand the importance of self-care and the need to be strong every day. It's essential to know yourself and protect yourself from various challenges. Music. We're so glad you like this story. If you're enjoying it, please consider subscribing to the channel. We'll be posting new historical content every Thursday, so don't forget to turn on notifications. If you're going through a divorce or in a relationship that's not working out, we invite you to join our community. We've created an exclusive group to help you navigate divorce without too much suffering or trauma. We'll be sharing more information about our group and its benefits.